All right, being respectful of everyone's time, I am going to start us off. Thank you everyone for joining this month's episode of Exemplify. My name is Emily Simpson with Select Path, and today we are joined by Sandy from Homewood Health. So we've been very excited to have her join us to speak to the science of happiness. So without further ado, there will be time for questions at the end, I should say, and if you'd like to put them in the chat until then, we'll go with that. So off to you, Sandy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure, really. I was telling everyone that that this is one of my favorite presentations to do. I never get bored with it, and I think I hope that you enjoy it as well. It's really I think it's important that when we're talking about mental health and wellness, that we're looking at research, and so this really brings together the science with what we we always have ideas about what we believe we should do to be happier, and so this is helping people understand what you really what it's all about science wise. So I am okay with, if someone has a question about a slide, I'm okay with jumping in. Otherwise, I look forward to your questions at the end. And really what we're going to talk about today is just this, developing a better understanding about happiness and the latest research, and help you understand where you have the greatest impact and influence on happiness. Excuse me. And then, of course, research-based techniques and strategies for long-lasting happiness. Happiness is such a nebulous term, really, and it's different for everyone. But the research helps us to understand that the way that we used to think is that success equals happiness, but it really is happiness equaling success. You will be more successful in your life, in your relationships, in your wellness journey, when it starts with happiness. And so I remember when I first learned this, I thought, okay, great, but how do I be happy, I guess, right? So we do have a great formula based on the science. And I'm also going to share with you a really good video that you can access, share with people, because it's just available on it's a TED Talk. So I always say share the wealth, and I'm not going to show you the entire video, but we are going to talk a bit about it. So what is happiness? A couple of sort of definitions. I like this one: the experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. So let's unpack that for a minute. Joy, contentment, or positive well-being. So I think that that resonates with a lot of us in terms of what we think of as happiness. But I really love the sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. So that sometimes is, as a former therapist, what we struggle with sometimes is really feeling that that meaning and feeling that what we're doing is worthwhile, no matter what it is, right? It doesn't have to be what we would often think of as a job in serving other people necessarily. So let's talk about the impacts. People who are happy at work are actually 10 times more engaged, 125% less burnout in people who are happier at work, 66% fewer sick leaves, 51% less turnover. So, that all sounds great, right? Especially from an employer's perspective. But the good news is that we can actually build happiness. We don't have to wait for it to come to us. And the more active that we are, the better. So here's where I'm going to show you a bit of this TED Talk. So I'm going to come out of this mode, and I'm going to pull up the video now. This is, like I said, a TED Talk. The Happy Secret to Better Work. And this researcher, his name is Sean Aker. He's also written some really great books. So I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's pretty fabulous. And if you want to just jot down so that you can access this video again, The Happy Secret to Better Work. So I'm going to go ahead and show probably most of this, but not the full 12 minutes. Emily, did you just hear that? So you guys are
Yeah.
seeing it and hearing? Okay, good. I'm going to go full screen then. All right.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed I had put out all my G.I. Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's Milos and ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story. Which is my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side, and somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, suddenly Amy disappeared off of the top of the bunk bed and landed with this crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister, and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could. She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's face this wail of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter's nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now that was cheating, because there's nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy the hurt 5-year-old little sister, but Amy the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past, and you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict, as her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn. With one broken leg. What we stumbled across at this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time, was something that was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back studying you here in the room, I would be thrilled, because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things that we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how, in a statistically valid way, do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential, or for happiness, or productivity, or energy, or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like, how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom? Scientists change the answer to, how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom? And then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled, because that means you're either depressed, or you have a disorder, or hopefully both. We're hoping for both, because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is to make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit, and what positive psychology posits, is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. Then instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says, why? Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor? Whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is study you. Because maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide. The reason this graph is important to me is when I turn on the news, it seems like the majority of the information is not positive. In fact, it's negative. Most of it's about murder, corruption, diseases, natural disasters, and very quickly, my brain starts to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. What that's doing is creating something called the medical school syndrome, which if you know people who have been to medical school during the first year of medical training, as you read through a list of all the symptoms and diseases that could happen, suddenly you realize you have all of them. I have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is a whole nother story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, "Sean, I have leprosy." Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later that allowed me to go, suddenly something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to, wasn't that guy. But what happened, I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years, and what I found in my research and my teaching is that these students, no matter how happy they were with their original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up, I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, "This freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter," which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, "Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about?" Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, "We already know that." So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, "I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just so you know, that's not a wellness week, that's a sickness week." What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Super easy guy to listen to, don't you think? I love his work. His videos are fantastic as well, but his book, like I said, might even be more than one, but really a couple of key things there. I don't know if they stood out to you, but it's basically we have this idea of how we're going to be happy in our world, and it doesn't work. So like I said, the good news is that we can build happiness, and we have a bit of a formula. It can be tweaked, it can be added to, but a bit of a formula. So there are some myths though about happiness, that it requires a search, that we need to go find happiness, that it's our job when we're young to find what makes us happy. And that in order to be happy, we need to change our circumstances. It is not the case. So, and we also often believe you're either born happy or not. We all know people who are happy, and it seems like they're just born that way. And there's nothing that you can do to change this. So those are all myths. Not true. No matter what your circumstances are, you can be happier. If you put a few simple things into your life, and basically retrain your brain. So if we retrain our brains, we are able to understand what we're doing wrong, but also what we need to do in order to think differently. So what makes us happy? So you can see that a good 50%, half of your pie, comes from genetics. And so sometimes we feel like, oh, well, 50% of it is already our issue. So, there's nothing that I can do about that. Well, even that can be overcome. Just because genetically you have a tendency to see the negative or to think negatively, and your brain is wired a certain way, doesn't mean that you can't change that. Your circumstances, like he said, only 10% of your feeling of happiness in life. It's intentional activities that we have the most control over, but also can make such a huge difference. A study of the richest people making more than 10 million per year report only slightly higher levels of happiness than the office workers they employ. So why do our circumstances have such little impact on our happiness? And again, if we're constantly changing the goal to, okay, I achieved that, now I need to go to the next thing, then we're not enjoying what we're doing, because we're moving that we're moving sorry, I lost that word. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about those intentional activities. So again, if 40% of our happiness can be controlled through our activities, then we all have the ability to make small changes that can have a large impact on our happiness, our contentment, our wellness. So there are 5 things that we can do to, that are proven through research to be intentional activities that will be helpful. Some of these may work for some of you, and others maybe not, but if you even do 1 or 2 of these on a regular basis and create that habit, you can retrain your brain to think differently. Instead of always looking for the negative. And I love what he said about, the media and what we read and what we see on TV, things like that. It really does, we extrapolate that is, that kind of negativity and the horrible things are bigger than they really are, because that's what the focus is in society. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do. I do just want to stop for a second here and make sure that there aren't any questions or comments that we want to address right now. Anyone? Okay, all right. So let's move forward. Again, feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat. I also want you to know that you know, one of the things that that positive psychology has done for the practice of counseling or therapy has really helped us to change our focus. Instead of assessing what's going wrong and what are all the things that are negative in your life, we're able to help people to see the positives and how did you get through something difficult, because what are those qualities about you that create that resilience and you know, so the world of psychology has changed so much because of some of this research, and it's exciting for many of us. So 5 steps to training your brain to become a little more positive, which then leads to greater happiness. One, you know, some of you have heard of gratitude journal, or spending some time thinking of things that you are grateful for. I actually find this to be difficult myself, but if you do it for 21 days in a row, and even if you're at first really struggling to come up with 3 things that you're grateful for, or you continue to sort of think of the same 3 things, what you're doing again is you're training your mind to scan for positive things instead of threats. One of the reasons why we have such high anxiety in our world is because we are constantly being bombarded with threats to our safety, threats to our culture, threats to our you know, and again, it's a lot of the media trains us to believe that the world is a scary place and we should focus on the threats and how unsafe it can be out there for us. But the fastest way to teach optimism is to actually scan your mind for positive things. Now, even if what you're grateful for is, you know, an opportunity to do something nice for someone, or you know, if it's something really small, as long as it's something that you feel positive about, you are training your mind to scan for more positivity, which is, you know, super important. A lot of people struggle with journaling, but maybe what you do is, you know, set yourself a reminder in your calendar to sit down and think of 3 things you are grateful for, and then do it on a regular basis. Second one, journaling one positive experience. So for 2 minutes, sounds like a short period of time, but it can feel very long. I want you to write in detail about one positive experience you've had during the last 24 hours. So sometimes, again, it might be difficult to recall one, but if you can think about it, and then if you actually relive it, so you're writing in detail, this happened, and then this happened, and, you know, and then I said this, and so it teaches your brain that behavior matters. So it really is, again, very key to becoming more positive. Exercise. Some of you are thinking, oh gosh, here we go again, exercise. Everyone's always telling you to exercise more. But you don't need much exercise in order to retrain your brain to get those endorphins moving. So just 15 minutes of fun cardio activity. Could be dancing, it could be jumping jacks, it could be running in place, whatever, you know, it could be that you have a virtual reality headset and you are doing one of the any sports that you can do through that. So 15 minutes of fun cardio activity is really the key to exercise here. It's not the drudgery. It's not, okay, I need to go run for an hour. That can be important and helpful as well. But what we're talking about in this particular situation, the research shows that it's 15 minutes a day of some cardio activity. Sorry. So breathing. Again, a lot of people are learning that meditation and breathing is very, very important. So I want to actually do a little breathing exercise with you here. So stop what you're doing. Close your eyes if you are comfortable with it, but you don't need to. But just focus, a soft focus on one thing in front of you. And I want you to just breathe for a minute, because often when we are busy and working throughout the day or running around, being overly busy like we often are, we forget to breathe. So what I want you to do is just spend 2 minutes thinking about your breath, taking a deep breath in and letting it go. You can even, you could set a timer for 2 minutes. You could just, do one of the breathing meditations that you can find in the many apps or online that are free. But just basically, what I want you to do is focus. Sometimes you can say in and out, in and out. Or you can count. A lot of people like to count. So maybe they'll take 5 breaths in, release it for 10. So those of you who have high anxiety levels, which is unfortunately a lot of us nowadays, or find it difficult to focus on just one thing, may really struggle with this at the beginning. But don't stop trying, because again, what you're doing is you're training your brain. You're going to improve your stress level. And so again, you can set a timer, you can set an alarm, you can do this at the beginning of your day, the end of your day, you can decide when is the most stressful time for you in your workday and do it then. Because what you will do is de-stress a little bit and focus on just the one thing. You will find that there will be many thoughts that will invade your brain, which is why they say sometimes it's helpful to count or to have a mantra or something that you say when you breathe. But if you are struggling with this at all, it means that you need to do it more consistently, because what social media, what our phones, what technology, what the fast pace of the world has done is it has trained our brain to focus for seconds instead of minutes. So this is going to help dramatically. Last but not least, express kindness. So those random acts of kindness that we hear about, again, I find it very helpful in my day to do a reminder. I started doing this myself probably maybe a year and a half ago. And now it becomes automatic. Now I actually look forward to the part in my day where I'm thinking, okay, who can I lift up with something, who did something nice for me, or who do I really appreciate something about? And so writing that positive email, praising or thanking someone or a text, it really does become a great habit. People who do this on a regular basis, according to Sean Aker, are known as positive leaders. So when you have strong social connections, when you are someone that people want to be around, when you get along with people, and it doesn't take much to get along with people if you're being kind, it's the greatest predictor of long-term happiness. So just to remind you, I'm going to go back a little bit here. 3 acts of gratitude, 1 positive experience. So that's 2 minutes a day that you have to relive it, which means you have to write about it in detail. And then exercise for 15 minutes, do something fun, get a cardio activity in that's fun for you. Breathe, and do that for 2 minutes. And then express kindness through a text or an email. So it doesn't even have to be 2 minutes, but just a quick email or text to someone that matters to you, and you want to let them know that you really appreciate them for what they did, what they said, who they are. So they may seem like simple things, but the reality is that what those 5 things will do, research shows, is create a positivity and allow your brain to search for positivity, which will increase your happiness level, believe it or not. And if you schedule time in your day to engage in things that boost positive emotions, then you will feel happier. I can attest to doing it myself. I'm a bit surrounded in my life, in my family, sometimes with people who are easily focused on the negative. And I find that doing these activities has really helped me to even counter that, being exposed to and dealing with the negativity. And I think that I hear less of it now too. Maybe I'm actually inspiring some people in my family to think differently as well. But so instead of focusing again on your circumstances, remember that you're working on the 40%. You're working on the things that that you can do to take an active role in creating more happiness in your life. I think that if you really struggle, I also want to say this. People who have a clinical depression, your biochemistry, your biology, when you are depressed, makes it much more difficult to recognize positive things. I used to call it, when I was in practice as a counselor, I used to call it that cloud that hung over your head. When you are depressed, the cloud is always there. You're not seeing the sun, even though it's an absolute gorgeous day. Your depression is keeping that cloud hanging over your head, so that it's much harder for your brain to develop positive things or even notice that anything is positive. So if you find that that is the case for you, I really want you to know that when you treat the depression, you will find it is so much easier to see the positive. If you are constantly thinking about threats in the world and creating scenarios in your mind that are what ifs, what if this happens, what if that happens, you may be dealing with an anxiety disorder or an anxiety problem. Reach out for help for those things, because it's not easy to struggle with anxiety and depression. And if you find that you are really struggling to adjust your behavior, to add in those things, those 5 things, and to improve the 40%, then you may actually need some professional help in order to do that. So I just like to throw that in as a caveat, because sometimes what I find is that people who have a strong depression will actually feel worse or guilty that there's something wrong with them, because they try these things and it doesn't help, or it doesn't work, or they're unable to even find 3 positive things in their life that they're grateful for. So I always just like to let people know that it could be because of clinical depression, and it changes the way that your brain chemistry works. And so there are easy and comprehensive treatments for those things that we can help you feel like you're getting back on on the right path. Okay, so I am going to open it up to questions and comments. Anyone have anything that they would like to comment on or ask a question about? Excellent. Okay. So again, one of the things that I want you to remember is that anyone can access that video. You can share it with loved ones or friends and family. So that is it's in the public domain. I would also highly recommend his book, or there's also at Yale, there is a class on wellness and happiness. There are a couple of organizations that are spending a lot more time studying this, doing it. Greater Good is one of them. I also can share with you all that there's a newsletter. I forget if it's daily or weekly, but it's called the Good News Network. You can sign up to get the Good News Network newsletter in your email, and that'll be a prompt for some positive news in the world as well. So really appreciate oh, I love that. Yeah, you're right. The dues are provided without the background as to why. Why should I do this? You know, and I think it's really important for us to understand how we can train our brains, and that we really have been trained, unfortunately, by society, by media, to focus on negative, and it doesn't have to be that way. So, any other comments that I'm missing, Emily?
I was just saying there was some comments here. I'm not sure if it was mentioned. There was a study that Hillary Thomas participated in, had a very positive experience and big impact with her. And then Christina here says that they do a lot of wise mind and positive looking in DBT. So they really enjoyed it, and this is really relatable. Hillary also said, I find if you look at where you are, not where you were or where you want to be, that has a big impact.
Yeah,
and Jen says, thank you, and a great presentation. Very
good. Well, keep it going, keep talking to each other about this. And again, remember, you know, I love his example of this is our wellness week. We're going to focus on all of the negative things. Wellness is really, it's important to focus on the positive. And so the more that you can do that, the more that you can bring that to your life and to the workplace, I think, you know, we all benefit from that. Isn't that true? So
right. And there will so Jeff, our marketing communications manager, he's off today, but once he's returned from his holidays, the PowerPoint will be available. Sandy will be able to provide that, as well as the recording and any additional resources, or if you'd like to follow up with her personally, then there's absolutely an opportunity to do so afterwards. So
yeah, I welcome it. That'd be great.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you for everyone joining today. And just to let everyone know, we will be having our May seminar. We'll save the date. It will be May 21st. So we look forward to seeing everybody then, and we'll see everyone soon. Thank
you.
You've
got a couple of extra minutes since we ended early. You can go start your five positive practices, right? All right. Take care, everyone.
Have a great afternoon.
Have a great rest of the week.